Hey guys, so this is the February block of the month for our 2019. So we're taking our 8-inch square and we're cutting this one into 4-inch squares. We're cutting our second strip down to a 4-inch by 12-inch strip. So I'm just cutting up my 3.5-inch square, and I just want to remind you guys on how to square up your fabric. So you can see that I can have my fabric lying sideways on my mat. I'm not using my mat for cutting, I'm using my ruler. So all these lines here that are on your ruler, you want to line it up along the edge of your fabric here. So I need 1, 2, 3.5. So now I'm going to move this over and see how now I'm going to have a 3.5-inch square because of these little rulers. And now that we have all of our fabric cut down to size as per the pattern, we're going to start sewing. So as a refresher of how to cut our 4-inch squares with our corner beam ruler, we want to use the 1-inch right here, the corner beam trim, this dotted line right here. We're going to line this up on the edge of our block so that the top is right at the top. Okay, and you can see here that it says cut strip 4-inch, and so I'm going to move this down so I'm a little bit square. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to cut. I'm going to pull this aside. This little piece here is scrap. Now I'm going to use corner beam trim line 2, which is the angled piece. Again, we're going to match it up in the corner, up at the top. We're going to match our jagged line. Okay. See how we've got this? And then we're going to cut. So now we have our corner beam piece, and we're going to do that to all 4 pieces. Now we're going to take our 4 by 12-inch strip. What is important to remember is that we want to put wrong sides together so that when we're cutting this piece, we're getting mirrored images. Okay, so we're going to lay that together. Now what we're going to use is this solid black line right here. Okay, we're going to line that up on the edge of our fabric, and again you can see that we're at the cut strips at 4, so I'm going to square this up a bit, and we're going to cut. Okay, so I'm going to move this over so you can see. Now we're going to rotate our ruler so that we're using this little black piece here for the second cut. We're rotating this to the bottom, and we're lining it up along the bottom line of our fabric right here. We're using this angled piece to square it up. Okay, so now I'm using this angle and I'm cutting like so. I'm going to move this aside. Okay, so now when I grab my corner beam piece here, right here, I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to turn it into a square. Okay, so I'll show you again. Here's my corner beam piece. Now here's that second cut that I had. I'm going to take this piece, lay it up here, and I'm going to take this piece and lay it here. And that's how we're going to rebuild our square. So now we're going to get ready to sew these corner beam pieces. I'm going to use my Acorn Precision Piecing Glue, which I absolutely love, okay? And I'm just going to put a dollop here, one in the center, and one on the corner, okay? I'm going to take my piece, I'm going to lay it on top, and remember, we're going to square these up, so it's okay if it comes over, and I'm going to set it. I'm going to go to the sewing machine and sew it. So remember, it's recommended that you sew on a scant 1/4 inch. So right now, my needle is in the center position. A scant is going to bring our needle over to the right, so towards your throat space a little bit more. All I'm going to do is move my needle over 1 position. And now it's just off center. You see how now you can see that 5 all together and it's off to the side. So I have my 1 piece sewn on. I'm going to use my starch pen here and just run it across this seam so that it lays super, super flat. I'm just going to give it a little press with an iron. I love my dry iron for this. And now see how there's no like lifting, it's all completely flat. So I'm going to use my acorn glue and I'm going to sew on, I'm going to tack down this piece here and sew it again. So I just wanted to show you the back of this block after using that precision glue and that starch pen. I hope you can see here, I'll try to go this way here, how flat that is. So as a long armor, that's a long armor's dream to have perfectly flat seams. As a piecer, I'll flip this over here. Do you see how everything is super flat here? So now when I want to match up my seams, everything is super easy to match up. So if you don't have the acorn piecing glue and the starch pen, honestly, you need to get it because it is amazing. Now I've grabbed my rotating mat so that when I want to cut this block and square it up, I don't have to move my fabric. I'm just going to be moving my block, okay? So the next set of directions we're going to use is, here, I'll move this over to the side here so you can see it a bit easier. See this triangle here, right here? So this is where we now want to use to square up our block. I'm going to match this point right here to the top of my corner beam piece. So right on here, hopefully you can see this on this darker fabric. There we go. So now we're squaring it up here. So like anything, when we're squaring it up, we're going to cut these two pieces off first. So cut, cut. Okay, so now, because I know those edges are square, I do have to pick up my ruler and move it. Okay, so now I want to use this here, okay, and get it to the 3.5 mark. Okay, so you can see that those edges are square. So I'm going to rotate this over. Hopefully that didn't bug you too much. And sorry, I got to go like this, rotate my ruler. So I know that I'm doing 3.5. And see here, I still have my full 1/4 inch, so I'm not going to cut off that corner. And you see this little bit right here? Sorry, I'll get my fingers out of the way. See how it's showing me that I'm still going to get that 3.5 inch, okay? So I only have to cut off this little bit because this side stayed fairly square. I am going to cut this little marginal amount right here off. So cut and cut. And now I have a 3.5 inch square. And we're going to do that to all 4 of them. Our next step is we're going to sew our 2 inch by 14.5, together. And then we're going to subcut these into 3.5 inch strips. Okay, so we're going to sew this next. So now that we have all of our D and E's subcut into 3.5 inch squares, we're going to take all of our four 2-inch squares, and we're going to draw a line across it from point to point. And then see how I've laid them out here? So then what you're going to do is you're going to take this and put it on your E fabric, I believe. No, yes, on your E fabric, sorry. And then we're going to sew from point to point here, okay? And then when this flips over, it's going to look like this, okay? And see my layout on these two here? I'm doing opposite sides, okay? So that's our next step. So I have all my pieces daisy chained together. The next step is we're gonna just cut off this little inside square right here, okay? So I'll use my scissors, try to move my hands out of the way here. I'm gonna cut this off. And then when we press it, we're pressing it this way. When you keep that extra little white piece behind there, it'll help keep it nice and square. It's a handy little trick. I try not to cut off that back square all the time. So now I've laid out the block in the order that we're going to sew it. And the directions have you starting at the top and sewing these ones. Then you're going to sew this to this, this to this, and then we're going to attach them all together from there. So this is just another example that I wanted to show you, okay? So see this side here, I used the glue and the starch pen, and then this side here is typically what we get without the starch pen. And do you see how significantly different that is? It is so much easier to match up all of your seams when you're using that starch pen. So I am going to go back and use the starch pen on this one now to make sure that it looks as flat as that. So here is finished February block in Megan's Fabrics. In the batiks, here I can rotate this block so it's the right way, like mine. There we go. Okay, so there are your February blocks. Again, here's your January block. The January block, we switched this one just to show you that you could kind of switch those outer blocks if you wanted to. Okay, happy sewing. March is next. See you soon.